Hello dairy farmers, once again I'm your milk guy Wabena Francis from Direct Consults, and we are transitioning from the dry season to the wet season, and this is the time you should be preparing your land. We have been singing this now and then, but now today we are going to go deeper into land preparation, and we are going to use only 6 steps of how a prepared land should look like. Now, before you even think about preparing your land, the first thing you're supposed to do is to do a proper site selection and mapping of your soil. Site selection, this is where you choose a site, this is where you choose a land to plant your pasture, depending on different factors, things like drainage, things like climate, things like purpose. Why do you want to plant the pasture? Then mapping, you're going to map your land into those categories. You have a visual layout. At Direct Consults, we always do this. You just contact us, we do this for you. Then after you've done that, it is important to note that site selection and mapping is important because it improves efficiency. Yes, your workers are not supposed to be moving around all over the farm all the time just to look for feeds for the animals. When you map your land properly, then your workers can work efficiently per day. And for us at Direct Consults, we always prioritize efficiency. Yes, we are looking at cost efficiency, we are looking at labor efficiency, meaning if you map your land very well, then your laborers are going to be efficient and you're also going to avoid costs. Now that brings me to the second advantage. This activity enables you to reduce costs on the farm. If you plant pastures badly, if you plant pastures on a wrong site, it means you're going to find yourself incurring costs of transporting those pastures from that site to the where animals eat from. Another advantage of doing site selection and mapping your land is it helps you to improve on production and productivity, because you will know that this pasture is suitable for this kind of land, this pasture is suitable for this kind of soil. And finally, it also boosts milk production, and that is our major goal, because it helps you to do that consistency. If you have pastures near the feeding area, it is going to be a consistent routine to serve those pastures to the animals so that they can give you enough milk. That is why you should do site selection and soil mapping. Now let us go to the next step. After you've done proper site selection and land mapping, the next thing is to clear those bushes that are in your farm. We cannot mix our pastures with the native grasses, so we have to clear them out of the farm. We either use them as mulches for those of you who have banana plantations, or we can even burn them so that they can improve on the pH of our soil. The third thing to do after that is to clear these trees and tree stumps, because normally after bush clearing, we always have trees and tree stumps remaining in our farm. And there are also farmers that have anthills in their farms. We remove all these. The reason why we do this is if you're using tractors cannot dig where there is a tree stump. But also we have to remove the trees, because when these trees shade the pastures will not grow under a shade, meaning you're going to lose all that land around the trees that you have left in the garden. So if you're doing pasture production and you're not planning to do free range system, it is better you cut out all these trees so that you can increase the space where the pastures are going to grow. But also you're supposed to remove the anthills, because one, anthills contain termites. These termites are pests, especially those farmers who are planting napiers, who are planting maize, who are planting sorghum. So when you leave these termites in the garden, the termites will attack our pastures, and by the end of the season we shall have reduced biomass. But also most times where there is an anthill, that is considered lost soil, meaning if you've planted 10 acres but you have tree stumps in there, you have anthills in there, you have trees in there, out of the 10 acres, you're going to have only 8 arable land, for example, depending on how much of those you have. Ploughing is the next step. After you've removed all these things, the land is clear of the bushes, it is clear of tree stumps, it is clear of termite anthills. Then we go to ploughing. Ploughing occurs in 3 different phases. There is first ploughing, opening up the virgin land. That is its purpose. Then there is second ploughing. Immediately after first ploughing, you don't go to the second ploughing. You first leave the land to rest for a little bit, and that one should be done in this period where we are about to transition from the dry season to the rainy season. Then after 2-3 weeks, you do the second ploughing. Second ploughing means you're going to break these big particles, these big soil clods in the second ploughing as we prepare to plant our pastures. Now, before you do the third ploughing, which is called harrowing, you can apply the manure if you have it, because when you apply the manure at this stage and then you pass through with the harrow disc, it means the manure is going to mix well with the soil, so that when you plant your pastures, they can give you a lot of herbage. After you've applied manure, then we go to harrowing. Harrowing breaks the soil particles into small fine particles, because most of the pasture seeds that are on the market are very fine seeds. When you plant them when the soil particles are big, the seeds will not germinate. That is the reason why we always encourage you to do the third ploughing. Maybe you can just do 2 ploughings if you're going to plant cuttings like Napier. The fourth step is to select the pastures that you're going to plant. Remember, we are going to be basing on what we started with, right from pasture site selection up to ploughing. You choose a pasture that goes in a given site. For example, those in lowlands, you choose pastures that can sustain waterlogging. Then those in highlands, you choose pastures depending on the need. There are some pastures that don't grow in hill areas, and there are some pastures that don't grow in lowland areas. That is the purpose of site selection that we did. So my advice to you is always to get pastures from the right and trusted sources, because there are very many varieties on the market and farmers confuse these pastures with others, especially the Bracharia varieties. We have over 6 varieties of Bracharia, but if you choose the wrong Bracharia variety, then that means you're going to make losses and you become less efficient, which is not part of direct consults. After selecting the pasture, now it will be time to plant it. Always use trusted consultants or agronomists. We have them at Direct Consultants. You just have to contact us, then we send you these gentlemen or ladies so that they can help you through the planting process. There are very many methods of planting pastures, and the first one is line planting, but there's also broadcasting. At Direct Consultants, for efficiency, we always recommend you use line planting, because broadcasting is good because it saves time, but the only problem with it is that it wastes seeds. But also, during the weeding process, you will not be able to differentiate between the pasture and the weed, because weeds are scattered everywhere, and some areas are going to have a lot while other areas have less. That is why we don't encourage broadcasting. So why do we encourage line planting? Line planting ensures that where you plant the pasture is where it grows, meaning during weeding you will be able to tell the difference between the weed and the pasture. And also during manure application, you will know where to apply the manure and where to not apply the manure to save on the nutrients. That is why we encourage line planting. If your land is not fertile, if you're using marginal lands, it is hilly, it is rocky and not fertile, the spacing we encourage you to use is 1.5 feet, because there the pasture will not be able to expand very fast, just like in fertile soils. But if you're growing in fertile soils, we always encourage you to give a spacing of 2 feet, because when the soils are fertile, then the pastures are going to have more herbage, meaning the pastures are going to expand and you're going to get more biomass. Why shouldn't you go below 1.5 feet when you're planting? It is because this one gives you ample space to apply the manure, ample space to weed your pastures. If you plant less than 1.5 feet as in spacing, that means you have no difference between someone who just scattered their seeds in the garden. But also, if you plant above 2 feet, it means weeds are going to disturb you. You're going to leave a lot of space between the rows so that the weeds can grow. Okay, so don't go below 1.5 feet, but don't go above 2 feet. Now I'll give you a bonus, but before we do that, ensure that you've liked this video, you share this video to fellow farmers who are going to plant their pastures, and also don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to follow Direct Consults, because for us we are here to work with farmers, especially those who are doing dairy. So now let me give you a bonus. After you've done the other 5 steps, the next thing after that is supposed to be maintenance and management. How do you manage your pastures? How do you maintain them when they have germinated? The first thing is to weed them. We have stubborn pastures, things like alfalfa. Alfalfa needs weeding at least 3 times before the first harvest, while other pastures you can weed once or twice. But weeding is key. We have also talked about this weeding, why you should weed your pastures, and the major reason is to reduce on competition, because if you apply manure, these weeds have better ways of taking up this manure compared to our pastures. But also there are weeds that are toxic to animals, that contain anti-nutritional factors, that contain toxins, that also reduce milk production. So if you don't weed your pastures, the pastures will not give you what you're exactly looking for. Then the second practice in pasture management is irrigation. If you plant your pastures and it fails to rain, it means you have to water them. That is why we always encourage you to plant in the rainy season, but also during the dry season, because most pastures are perennial. It means they need watering. If you don't have the capacity, don't worry, they will still be available, they will still be there, just that they will be stunted, waiting for the rainy season. Then the final practice in pasture maintenance and management is manuring. The manure you added at the harrowing stage is not enough. You have to keep adding manure into the pastures so that they can keep producing enough biomass, okay? And this manure should be well weighted, because if you add fresh manure during the decomposition, it is most likely going to scorch your pastures. So add well decomposed manure so that you avoid all these losses. Thank you very much. Let us catch up in the next video. Bye.